Before we begin, I'd like to indicate something. What you'll be hearing in a few minutes is the first chapter of a fanfiction. This fanfiction is based on a very popular series of games called Fire Emblem. In this case, Fire Emblem Awakening. I think you are well aware that this project, which is based on a video game, will include lots of spoilers. Yep. So, if you haven't played the game and don't want to be a victim of spoilers, you probably shouldn't listen to this. If you don't care or already played the game, enjoy. Return to Us, a Fire Emblem fanfiction by Robin, Queen of Ylisse. Chapter 1. Present Time. A heavy silence weighed down upon the dimly lit room. At its center stood a large desk, where a lone figure sat, hunched forward as he toiled over his work. The man had the muscular build of a warrior, with dark blue hair and eyes to match. He wore a shoulder plate on his left side attached to a white cape that lay still beside him, while his right arm remained exposed, revealing the mark that declared him as the royal lineage of Ylisse, the mark of the exiled. Chrom let out a long sigh, resting his head in his hand as he lightly massaged his temple. Subconsciously, his hand grazed the spine of a large blue-covered book which lay ever present on the side of his desk. The large book was filled with the workings of complex strategy, the kind of which he could never hope to fully understand. But it had been her favorite, which was more than enough for him to keep it close. Glancing down at the book brought back pleasant memories. But with those memories also came pain, a deep sorrow laced with regret and longing. "Boo!" An excited young voice cried out from beside him, driving Chrom from his thoughts. He turned to find the welcoming sight of a young girl, her long hair the same color as his own, and her blue eyes alit with a child's vigor. Chrom gave a light chuckle, reaching down to pick up his excited daughter, saying, "You scared me." "I always do, Daddy," Lucina answered, pride beaming in her gaze. Chrom couldn't help but smile, his little toddler never failing to lighten up his mood. "So how did you manage to slip in here this time? I thought Frederick was watching you," Chrom asked, and the young girl responded with a devious grin, one that reminded him of her mother. Before the exiled could question his daughter further, his suspicions were confirmed as the door burst open. "Forgive me, my lord." Frederick's familiar voice called out as the knight stumbled into the room. It was a rare occasion to see the faithful knight without his armor, yet he never failed to look businesslike, dressed in a white suit with neatly kept brown hair. "I don't know how she got away from me this time. I was so sure I had," he muttered to himself as he came at attention before the exile's desk, shooting a stern glare at the princess, who gave a playful giggle. "Is she in the study again?" a female voice called out from down the hall outside. "Yes," Frederick called back, and it wasn't long until Lissa strolled into the room, her pale blonde pigtails bouncing up and down as her yellow dress dancing around her. "Well, there you are, little one," she said, grinning happily at her young niece before continuing, "It's time for your nap." "But I want to stay with Daddy," the young princess complained. "Your father is very busy. You cannot just barge into here when he is working," Frederick scolded, his eyes tained heavily upon the girl sitting in Chrom's lap. "Now you shall obey your aunt and do as you are told." Lucina pouted, staring the knight down. "No, I won't go to sleep without a story," she stated firmly, crossing her arms and turning her head in protest. Frederick stood still, dumbfounded as the child told him off, and Lissa was doing all she could to contain a giggle. "Well, I suppose it's only fair," Chrom said, standing up, the excited toddler cuddling in his arms. "What story do you have in mind? Anything from your books? I want to hear the story about Mommy. How you and Mommy met each other. Oh, the Lord muttered to himself, his eyes gazing blankly into the distance, as he thought back once more to his lost beloved. Crom was quick to shake himself from his thoughts, turning back to his daughter, who looked up at him with expecting eyes. Yes, of course, Lucina, he answered with a smile, much to the girl's delight. Ylisse and Frederick both watched as the exile carried his daughter from the room, and silence followed until they were both sure the Lord was well out of ear range. Ylisse gazed down at the floor between her feet, sadness taking over her normally cheerful demeanor as she muttered, "Poor Crom. It's been far too long. It has to hurt." "We must remain a strong heart, my lady, lest we only make it harder for him," Frederick encouraged. 3 years, Ylisse continued. 3 years of Crom having to both rule a kingdom and raise young Lucy all alone. Heavens knows how much they've all struggled, how far Morgan and Lucina have gone in their search, and yet here we stand empty-handed, without as much as a small clue. Frederick put a strong hand on the shoulder of the healer in an attempt to reassure her. "We mustn't doubt, my lady. The least we can do is remain strong, for their sake." "You're right," Ylisse sniffled, wiping a tear from her eye. "It doesn't do anyone good to stand here and cry. I just wish she could return to us." "We all do," Frederick said, comforting the Elysian royalty. A long moment passed as neither individual spoke. Frederick was the first to stir, saying that he had personal matters to attend to, wishing Ylisse goodbye before departing. Ylisse remained alone in the room for a short time, until she finally brought herself to move, leaving behind the nagging memories of her friend. Crom lay his daughter down gently onto her bed, which was placed against the back wall of her large room. Lining the walls were an array of shelves, stocked with the child's belongings. Beside her bed was a small table where housed Lucina's most prized objects. A toy sword which Crom had given her for her birthday, a medallion that had once belonged to her mother, and a mask that had once belonged to the swordsman Marth. Little Lucina sat up in her bed, expecting eyes looking up at her father. Crom sat down beside his daughter on the edge of the bed, and the young princess cuddled up beside him. "So, you wish to hear the story of your mother?" Crom asked, receiving a very energetic response from the blue-haired girl. Crom's thoughts went back to her, went back to his lost beloved. He smiled sadly as the sorrow stung at him, but he shook it off. He had to be strong for his daughter. Reaching out, he took Lucina into his arm and began. "One day, many years ago, I came upon someone who lay alone in the middle of a field. She held no memory of who she was and no memory of where she was from, but there was something special about her. Something that stood out despite me knowing nothing about her. Something that would blossom into something wonderful. Something far greater than I would have ever imagined."